The planet Allura was a peaceful human colony, nestled deep in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Its people lived simple lives, farming, trading, and raising families far from the reach of the galactic empire. It was a place where children played under the golden sun, and the air was always fresh with the scent of the earth. Among these children was Ellie, a young girl whose laughter filled the air like music. Her bright eyes, full of wonder, always seemed to be searching for new things to learn, and she was beloved by everyone in the colony. But all that changed in an instant. The Galactic Empire, known across the stars for its cruelty and power, had made a decision. They needed to establish control over this remote colony, not because of its resources, but to send a message to the galaxy. No one escapes the Empire's reach. It was supposed to be a simple operation: suppress any resistance and subdue the population. The Empire, however, underestimated the humans. They didn't expect the people of Allura to fight back. And most importantly, they didn't expect Ellie. It all started one quiet morning when Empire soldiers, heavily armored and ruthless, descended from the sky in their sleek transports. The colony's peaceful existence was shattered as alarms blared and the first shots were fired. People scrambled, unsure of what to do, as the towering metal figures of the Empire's soldiers marched into their streets, demanding obedience. Ellie, being just a child, was terrified. She had never seen war, only heard stories from the elders about the days before the Empire's tyranny. But what she didn't know was that her innocence was about to be taken away, and with it, the hope of her people. As the soldiers rounded up the adults, searching for anyone who might resist, Ellie's father, Captain Marcus Kane, watched helplessly from a distance. He was a former soldier, one who had seen countless battles, and had long since retired from the war. He had chosen a life of peace, raising his daughter on a peaceful world. But today, that peace was ripped away, and he knew that the Empire would not leave without leaving its mark. Marcus had always promised Ellie that she would never have to live through the horrors he had seen. But that promise was about to be broken. The Empire soldiers, led by their commanding officer, Colonel Varric, quickly rounded up the villagers. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to enforce their will. The soldiers began dragging people to the central plaza, preparing to make an example of them. Ellie's mother, Miriam, tried to protect her daughter, but it was no use. She was quickly separated from Ellie, her cries lost in the chaos of the invasion. Ellie, terrified and confused, ran through the streets looking for her father. She knew he would protect her. But fate had something far crueler in store. As Ellie stumbled into the open square, a group of soldiers noticed her. Without hesitation, they raised their weapons. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Ellie looked around in fear, but the world was silent. Her eyes met those of Colonel Varric, and for a brief second, something cold passed between them, a recognition of what was about to happen. The soldier aimed his blaster, and with one quick pull of the trigger, Ellie fell to the ground. Marcus Kane heard the shot from a distance. His heart stopped, and every ounce of his body went cold. He knew immediately what had happened. Ellie was gone. The girl who had always made him proud, the child he had sworn to protect, was no more, and it was the Empire that had taken her. Rage filled Marcus like a tidal wave. For the first time in years, he felt the soldier's instinct awaken inside him. He ran to the plaza, his mind consumed by one thought: vengeance. The soldiers stood in a circle around Ellie's lifeless body, watching with disinterest. But as Marcus approached, his rage turned into something far more dangerous. His hands, once used for holding his daughter, now clenched into fists of fury. He pulled a hidden weapon from under his jacket, an old combat blade, dull from years of disuse, but still sharp enough to do its job. Without a word, Marcus charged at the Empire soldiers, cutting through them with precision and brutality. He didn't care if they outnumbered him. He didn't care if they had the advantage. All that mattered was revenge. The soldiers, caught off guard by the intensity of his attack, stumbled back. Marcus was unstoppable. each strike fueled by the memory of his daughter. Colonel Varric, seeing Marcus's onslaught, barked orders to his men. But it was too late. Marcus was a force of nature, driven by the grief of a father who had lost everything. In mere moments, Varric and his soldiers were retreating, scrambling to save themselves from the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Every victory we've had so far has been a surprise to them," Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with an edge of fury. "The Empire expects us to cower, to bow down to their power. But we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for every person they've crushed, every world they've destroyed. And we're going to show them exactly what happens when you kill one of us." The room was silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Then, one by one, the leaders of the resistance stood, their faces filled with determination. They weren't afraid. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for revenge, for justice. Meanwhile, the Empire was on high alert. They had underestimated the humans once, but they wouldn't make the same mistake again. The Imperial fleet commanders were ordered to tighten security across all sectors, and their spies began hunting down the human resistance, trying to find the source of their newfound power. But the humans were too clever. With their advanced cloaking devices and quantum computing, they were able to stay one step ahead of the Empire at every turn. Every time the Empire thought they had tracked down the resistance, the humans vanished into the shadows, leaving only the faintest trace of their presence. And then, the humans made their most devastating move yet. The Empire's primary communication network, the one that connected their entire fleet, was hacked. The humans, using their advanced AI and quantum technology, infiltrated the Empire's systems without leaving a trace. They took control of the communications network and sent out a message to every Imperial officer in the galaxy. "We are coming for you." The message was brief, but it carried weight. The Empire had never experienced such a direct challenge to its authority, and it shook the very core of their power. What had once been a simple rebellion was now a full-scale war. Humanity was no longer hiding in the shadows. They were out in the open, ready to take on the might of the Empire. And so, the galaxy was thrown into chaos. The Empire, once the undisputed rulers of the stars, now faced a threat they had never anticipated. A species that they had thought to be insignificant was now poised to take everything they had built and tear it down piece by piece. For Marcus Kane, it was only the beginning. The death of his daughter had sparked something inside him, something that could not be extinguished. He wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. He was fighting for the survival of humanity, and he would stop at nothing to see the Empire brought to its knees. The Empire's once unshakable grip on the galaxy was beginning to falter, and for the first time, its soldiers felt the weight of uncertainty. Word had spread across the stars. Humanity was no longer a helpless species, easily crushed beneath the Empire's heel. Instead, they had risen, fighting back with a strength that stunned the galaxy. It was in the heart of the vast, star-forged nebula, where the next great battle would take place. The resistance had gathered forces, scattered across different colonies, into a single unified army. They called it the United Earth Alliance. Marcus Kane, still burning with the rage of losing his daughter to the Empire, stood at the forefront of this new human revolution. The Alliance's fleet had grown in numbers over the past months. Ships, old war vessels, civilian transports, anything they could repurpose, were now armed with some of the most advanced weapons the galaxy had ever seen. They had cloaking technology, advanced AI systems, and even weapons that had once been myths to the Empire. But more than that, they had a cause that would not be silenced. In the shadow of the towering warships, soldiers trained tirelessly. People who had once been doctors, farmers, and engineers were now warriors. They had been forged in the fires of the Empire's cruelty, and their resolve was unbreakable. Each day, more resistance fighters arrived from the farthest corners of human colonies, eager to join the fight. "What we're doing here isn't just about revenge," Marcus Kane told them one evening as they gathered in the darkened briefing room. His eyes, cold with the fury of a man who had lost everything, met the eyes of each fighter. We're fighting for every life the Empire has destroyed, for every world they've enslaved. We are the storm they never saw coming. And it's time we make them regret underestimating us. His words stirred something in the hearts of those who heard them. It wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a fight to change the course of history. As the human, but even as the soldiers ran, Marcus knew something. This was not over. The Empire had crossed a line, and they would pay for what they had done. But it wouldn't be easy. The Empire was vast, and its wrath was unmatched. Yet Marcus knew that the message he was about to send would echo across the stars. He would make them all pay for Ellie's death. Kneeling beside his daughter's body, Marcus whispered one final vow to her. I swear, Ellie, I will make them all pay. The galaxy will know your name. His grief quickly turned to purpose, and with that, the first spark of war was lit. The Galactic Empire had made a fatal mistake, and they were about to learn what it meant to face humanity's wrath. As Marcus stood up, a cold determination filled his eyes. He wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. He was fighting for the future of all humans. The galaxy would soon know the cost of messing with humanity. And so, the first message was sent to the Empire. It wasn't a message of peace. It wasn't a request for mercy. It was a simple, chilling warning. Run while you can. The message Marcus Kane had sent to the Galactic Empire echoed across the stars, carried on waves of static and fear. His warning, run while you can, wasn't just an idle threat. It was a declaration that humanity, a species once thought weak and fragile, was capable of bringing down the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known. For years, the Empire had dominated the galaxy. Its fleets were unmatched, its soldiers deadly, and its grip on power absolute. They had crushed countless species, turning entire worlds into lifeless husks. But what the Empire had never expected, what they could never have prepared for, was humanity's ability to fight back when pushed too far. At first, no one outside the colony of Allura believed that Marcus Kane's warning meant anything. A lone man, seeking revenge for his daughter's death, could not possibly be a threat to the Empire. But as weeks passed, the Empire began to realize that they had underestimated the humans. Across the galaxy, whispers of rebellion began to surface. Human colonies, once peaceful and isolated, were rising up. Resistance cells popped up like wildfire, fueled by the anger and pain of those who had suffered at the hands of the Empire. But it wasn't just the humans fighting back. It was the technology they wielded. The very technology the Empire had ignored and underestimated. On Earth, humanity's homeworld, a team of scientists had spent years working on technology that had the potential to change the course of the galaxy. Quantum computing, cloaking devices, and powerful AI were all just a small part of humanity's arsenal. And now, with the Empire's aggression reaching new heights, these once secret projects were activated. Humanity had discovered something the Empire never could: unpredictability. While the Empire's forces were organized and systematic, humans were anything but. They fought not just with technology, but with ingenuity. With every battle, every skirmish, the humans seemed to find new ways to surprise and outsmart their enemies. And they did it without the cold precision of the Empire. They fought with heart, with rage, and with a burning desire to survive. One such battle took place in the outskirts of the planet Tullus, where a small human resistance group led by an ex-Imperial officer named Eric Selson made their stand. The Empire had sent a battalion of soldiers to crush the rebellion, but the humans had set a trap. The Empire's forces marched into a valley, unaware that the resistance had set up a cloaking field that hid their ships in the sky above. As the Empire's soldiers moved forward, the human ships dropped down like shadows, opening fire with advanced weapons that the Empire had no defense for. Within minutes, the battle was over. The Empire's battalion was decimated, and Eric Selson's group sent a message to the next Imperial fleet they encountered. We are not your slaves. We are your doom. The Galactic Empire had always believed that its technological superiority was enough to keep any species in check. But now, they were beginning to understand that humanity's ingenuity, combined with their sheer will to survive, made them a threat unlike any they had faced before. Back on Earth, the leaders of the human resistance, now known as the United Earth Alliance, gathered in secret. They knew that their time was running out. The Empire, though shaken, was still far too powerful. But the humans had one advantage that the Empire could never predict: unity. Marcus Kane, now a leader of the resistance, stood in front of a group of humanity's finest minds. Engineers, scientists, military strategists, people who had once been ordinary civilians, now transformed into warriors. Marcus knew that if they were to have any chance of defeating the Empire, they would need to strike hard and fast. Prepared for war, the Empire was still reeling from the shock of their message. They could no longer dismiss the humans as a small, insignificant resistance force. Their intelligence network, once thought infallible, was failing. The humans had outwitted them at every turn, and now they were building an army, one that was growing stronger by the day. The Empire's leaders called for an emergency council meeting. The supreme commander of the Imperial fleet, General Octavius, stood before the assembly of generals and advisors, his face as stern as ever. "These humans," he began, his voice low, "are no longer a nuisance. They are a threat. Their tactics have become more sophisticated, their resistance more organized. We must act before they become too powerful." His words hung in the air, but no one in the council dared argue. The threat of humanity was real, and it could not be ignored. Meanwhile, Marcus Kane and his fellow leaders knew that time was running out. The Empire's counterattack was imminent. They needed to strike first, to hit the Empire where it would hurt the most. The United Earth Alliance's fleet was ready, and on the distant planet of Ferrodin, in a hidden underground facility, the final stages of their secret weapon were complete. It was something the Empire had never expected, a weapon that harnessed the power of the planet's core, capable of unleashing destructive energy, capable of leveling entire fleets. The Alliance wasn't just going to fight with weapons. They were going to make sure that every move they made sent shockwaves through the Empire's power structure. They would force them to see that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The plan was simple but risky. The United Earth Alliance would move on the planet of Hesperus, where the Empire kept a vital military base. Taking that base would cripple the Empire's supply lines, leaving them vulnerable. But they couldn't afford to be caught by surprise. The fleet would need to move fast, and they would need every advantage they could get. As they made their way toward Hesperus, Marcus stood alone on the bridge of the flagship Liberator, staring out into the dark expanse of space. His thoughts drifted to the daughter he had lost. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see her innocent face, the face of a child who had been caught in the crossfire of an unjust war. He had failed her once, but he wouldn't fail again. Not when humanity's future was at stake. "The Empire won't know what hit them," he muttered to himself, his grip tightening on the railing in front of him. The time had come. The battle for Hesperus began as a series of quick strikes. The United Earth Alliance had learned well from their previous victories. Their ships, cloaked and undetectable, launched surprise attacks on Imperial supply lines. The Empire was caught off guard, and within hours, the first Imperial warships fell. The battle was fierce, but the humans had the advantage of unpredictability. Marcus led the charge on the ground. His troops, armed with cloaking technology and advanced weapons, struck deep into the heart of the Imperial base. It was a brutal battle, with both sides taking heavy losses. But as the day wore on, it became clear the Empire was losing ground. As the Empire scrambled to respond, a breakthrough occurred. The Empire's command center on Hesperus was breached. In a final desperate move, General Octavius himself boarded his flagship and directed a counterattack against the United Earth Alliance's fleet. But it was too late. The humans had already established a foothold on the planet, and the Empire's response was slow. Hesperus fell, marking the first major victory for humanity. It wasn't just a military victory, it was a statement. The Empire could be beaten, and the human resistance was only getting started. For the first time, the Empire's soldiers felt a sense of dread creeping over them. The resistance wasn't just a rebellion anymore. It was an unstoppable force. On the bridge of the Liberator, Marcus watched the battle unfold. Hesperus was theirs, and the Empire had been dealt a blow that would be felt across the galaxy. Humanity had shown the Empire that they would not be silenced. Not now, not ever. This was just the beginning. The resistance was rising, and the Empire's reign was coming to an end. The galaxy was no longer the same. The once feared Empire, a vast and seemingly invincible force, had begun to crumble. Its fleets were no longer the unstoppable juggernauts they once were. Its soldiers, once unshakable in their loyalty, were beginning to question their orders. And the resistance, the United Earth Alliance, had become a force to be reckoned with. They had dealt their first blow by taking Hesperus, and now they were pushing deeper into the heart of the Empire's territory. Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the Liberator, staring out into the cold abyss of space. His face was hard, eyes steely with determination. The victory at Hesperus had been just the beginning, but it had sent shockwaves through the Empire. The humans were no longer the weak, helpless species the Empire had assumed they were. They had proven that they could fight back, and now the Empire was on the defensive. The most shocking part was the speed at which the Alliance was growing. Every day, new fighters arrived from every corner of human space. Farmers, doctors, soldiers, and scientists. Men and women who had never imagined themselves as warriors had joined the cause. But more than numbers, the Alliance had something that the Empire lacked: unity. Every member of the United Earth Alliance knew why they were fighting. They knew what was at stake, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to ensure that the Empire's tyranny came to an end. Marcus turned to his crew, who stood at attention around the command center of the Liberator. "The Empire is coming for us," he said, his voice firm. "We know that, but they will never see us coming. We've already taken Hesperus. The next step is to hit them where it hurts the most, their capital." The room fell silent. The idea of attacking the Empire's heart, its very capital, seemed insane to many. But Marcus wasn't one to shy away from bold moves. If they were going to win this war, they needed to strike at the very core of the Empire's power. And he had no doubt that the time had come. Meanwhile, on the Imperial side, General Octavius paced back and forth in the war room of his flagship. The tension in the room was palpable. His officers were scrambling to make sense of the Alliance's sudden rise. Reports were flooding in from all corners of the galaxy. Rebel cells were springing up everywhere, and the Alliance's fleets were moving faster than they could react. "We've underestimated them," General Octavius muttered to himself. "This can't continue. We need to crush them before they grow any stronger." But despite his bravado, even he knew that the situation was dire. The Empire had suffered heavy losses. The fleet that had once struck fear into the hearts of the galaxy's inhabitants was now being forced into retreat after retreat. The rebels had shown that they could outsmart and outfight the Empire at every turn. The general turned to his most trusted advisor, Captain Thorne, a veteran officer with a reputation for ruthlessness. "We need to hit them hard, find their fleets, and destroy them. I don't care what it takes. Humanity must be wiped out before they can cause any more damage." But Thorne, looking over the latest intelligence reports, had a different thought. "Sir, we've been chasing shadows. The humans have shown they can adapt. They're always one step ahead. Perhaps we should rethink our strategy and lure them into a trap." Octavius narrowed his eyes. "A trap?" "Yes, sir. We know where they're heading next. The planet of Xylon is strategically important to the Alliance. It's their next target. If we can ambush them there, we can wipe them out once and for all." The general considered this. It was risky, but it was their best shot. "All right, Captain. Set the plan in motion. We'll take the fight to them before they even realize what's happening." Back aboard the Liberator, Marcus and his crew had been preparing for the next phase of their campaign. The intel was clear. The Empire was going to try and stop them at Cylon. It was a vital planet for both sides, a crossroads for trade and military operations. Whoever controlled Cylon would control a key piece of the galaxy. The United Earth Alliance fleet set course for Cylon, knowing that this would be the decisive battle. It was no longer just about taking one planet. This was the fight that would decide the future of humanity. If they succeeded here, the Empire would be left reeling, unable to recover. But if they failed, the Empire would be able to strike back with everything they had. As they neared the planet, Marcus stood on the command deck, looking out at the stars. His mind was heavy with the weight of the decisions he had made. The lives of countless soldiers, both human and Imperial, would be on the line in just a few hours. It was a risk, but it was one they had to take. They couldn't back down now. "Status report," Marcus asked, his voice steady but full of intensity. Approaching the planet, came the reply from the helmsman. "The Empire is already deploying their fleet. They're ready for us." Marcus nodded. The Empire was trying to ambush them, but he knew that the element of surprise still worked in their favor. The Alliance's cloaking technology would give them the edge they needed. If they could get in close enough, they could turn the tide before the Empire's forces even had a chance to react. The battle for Cylon began with a deafening roar. The Alliance's ships dropped out of hyperspace, cloaks flickering out as they emerged from the darkness. Immediately, the Empire's forces opened fire, but the humans were ready. Their ships weaved and dodged, their weapons striking with precision. It was chaos in space, a violent clash of titanic fleets as the two sides fought for control of the planet. On the surface of Cylon, the battle raged just as fiercely. Human soldiers, armed with advanced tech and unwavering resolve, clashed with Imperial forces. The planet's atmosphere was thick with the smoke of gunfire, the cries of battle echoing across the plains. It was a brutal fight, with every inch of ground hard-won. But despite the overwhelming might of the Empire, the United Earth Alliance held its ground. Their tactics were unpredictable, their resolve unshakable. The humans had fought for this moment, and they weren't going to give up easily. Hours passed, and the tide of the battle began to shift. The Empire, stretched thin across the galaxy, was finding it harder and harder to fight back. Their ships, once the pinnacle of military power, were now falling under the relentless assault of the Alliance's forces. On the ground, the resistance fighters pushed forward, breaking the Imperial lines and securing key positions. By the time the sun began to set over Cylon, the Empire was on the edge of defeat. Their fleet was in disarray, their forces scattered and demoralized. The United Earth Alliance had won. But the war was far from over. The Empire was still powerful, and it would take everything the humans had to finish what they had started. But for the first time in years, Marcus Kane and the Resistance could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. They had dealt a blow that the Empire would struggle to recover from, and they knew that this was just the beginning of the end. The United Earth Alliance had fought for this moment, and now they would fight for their future. The victory at Cylon was a momentous win for the United Earth Alliance, but as the dust settled, a chilling realization began to spread through their ranks. While they had crushed the Empire's forces in one key battle, they knew the war was far from over. The Empire was not just a force of soldiers and ships. It was an empire, a massive, overwhelming machine that could not be defeated with a single strike. For all their victories, the humans were still outnumbered, still outgunned. The Empire had the resources to wage war for decades, and the Alliance was barely able to hold its ground. Marcus Kane stood in the war room of the Liberator, his gaze fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy that hung in the center of the room. The lights were dim, the atmosphere heavy with tension. He could hear the murmur of his officers, their voices filled with both pride and uncertainty. The victory at Cylon had cost them dearly. Many brave soldiers had fallen, and countless ships had been destroyed. Despite their triumph, the Alliance was still vulnerable. "We've won the battle, but the war is far from over," Marcus said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was an underlying sense of urgency. "The Empire is reeling, but they're not finished. They'll regroup, rebuild, and come at us harder. We need to keep the pressure on them." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Rachel Carter, stepped forward. Her expression was grave as she glanced at the map. "Where do we hit next, sir? We've already taken some key systems, but we can't afford to spread ourselves too thin." Marcus rubbed his chin, deep in thought. The next move would be crucial. They couldn't keep fighting endless skirmishes. They needed a decisive strike that would cripple the Empire's ability to retaliate. But what could that be? Where was the Empire weakest? Suddenly, a voice broke through the room. It was Captain Davis, the intelligence officer, looking more serious than usual. "Sir, we've intercepted a transmission from an Imperial command ship. It's coming from the heart of their territory." The entire room went quiet. A transmission from the heart of the Empire. This could be the break they needed. "Patch it through," Marcus ordered. The holographic screen flickered to life, revealing a live transmission from General Octavius. His face was stern, his eyes filled with disdain as he spoke. "The Alliance is nothing more than a nuisance, a fleeting shadow. We will crush you all, one system at a time. Your victory at Cylon means nothing. The war will end on our terms, not yours." Marcus felt a cold chill run down his spine. Octavius was right in one sense. The Alliance's victory at Cylon had been significant, but it had not been enough to end the war. The general's words rang in his ears, but there was something else in his tone, a hint of fear. Octavius's face flickered, and the transmission cut out, replaced by an encrypted message. Davis quickly decoded it, and his eyes widened in shock. "Sir, the Empire is preparing for something massive. They're not just regrouping. They're building a new weapon, something capable of wiping out entire fleets in one shot." The room fell silent. The idea of the Empire constructing a weapon of mass destruction was not new. The Empire had a long history of building terrifying weapons, but this was different. If they completed it, the Alliance wouldn't stand a chance. "How long until they complete it?" Marcus asked, his mind racing. "We don't know for sure," Davis replied, "but the construction is well underway. If we don't act fast, they could have it ready in a matter of weeks." Marcus clenched his fists. They had been given a gift by the Empire, a weakness. The fact that they knew about the weapon gave them an opportunity to strike before it could be completed. But this wasn't just a battle for territory anymore. This was a race against time to prevent the Empire from gaining the ultimate advantage. "We need to find that weapon," Marcus said, his voice filled with determination. "And we need to destroy it before it's finished. That's our next mission." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The Alliance's best scouts, engineers, and spies were sent to infiltrate the Empire's territory. They gathered intel, snuck past enemy patrols, and uncovered the Empire's plans. And what they found was more terrifying than anything they could have imagined. The Empire's new weapon was called the Oblivion Cannon. It was an enormous planet-destroying superweapon, capable of firing an energy beam so powerful that it could reduce entire fleets to nothingness in an instant. The Empire had already begun construction on it in a heavily fortified base located on the remote planet of Thraxis. "Thraxis," Marcus muttered as he stared at the data. "That's where it's all going to end, one way or another." The planet was isolated, hidden away deep within Empire-controlled space. The Alliance had no choice but to launch a full-scale assault on the planet. The mission would be risky, but it was their only chance to stop the weapon from being completed. If the Oblivion Cannon was finished, the Empire would have the power to wipe out entire fleets, entire worlds, with a single shot. And the Alliance couldn't allow that to happen. The Alliance began its preparations for the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken. Ships were armed, fighters were prepped, and strategies were drawn up. Marcus knew that the odds were stacked against them. They were going up against the full might of the Empire, and their target was hidden in the heart of enemy territory. But this was their only chance to change the course of the war. The stakes had never been higher. As the Liberator and its fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading for Thraxis, Marcus stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. This was the turning point, the moment when everything would change. They would either succeed and take the Empire's weapon out of play, or they would fail, and the war would become even more hopeless than before. In the back of his mind, Marcus could hear Octavius's words echoing. "Your victory at Cylon means nothing. The war will end on our terms, not yours." But Marcus was determined to prove the general wrong. The Alliance would not back down. Not now. Not ever. The Liberator emerged from hyperspace above Thraxis, and the battle for the galaxy's future began. The battle for Thraxis had begun. The Liberator and its fleet dropped out of hyperspace above the planet's atmosphere, the cold void of space stretching out before them. The massive warships, sleek and deadly, took position, their engines humming with the promise of violence. The Alliance forces knew this would be their hardest fight yet. The Empire was not going to give up its most powerful weapon without a fierce defense. Marcus could feel the rage building inside him, but he forced himself to stay calm. The Empire might have been confident in its strength, but it had underestimated the Alliance, and more importantly, humanity itself. "Your time is up, Octavius," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "This ends today." Octavius's smile faltered for just a second, and Marcus knew it was a sign of fear. The Empire had been so certain of their power, but now they were realizing just how much they had underestimated humanity. Marcus knew this was their final chance to show the Empire that no matter how powerful they were, they would never break humanity's will. The battle continued to rage as the Liberator's crew fought to bring down the Empire's defenses. The war had reached its climax, and there was no turning back. This would either be the end of the Empire's reign or the start of a new era for the galaxy. Marcus knew that whatever happened, they had made their stand. He watched as his fleet fired the final barrage toward the shield. The explosion was deafening, but the result was unmistakable. The shield fell. The Empire had lost its first line of defense. With a final surge of energy, the Liberator's cannons fired one last time, right at the heart of the Oblivion cannon. The beams connected, causing the superweapon to tremble, sparks flying from its surface. But it wasn't enough to destroy it. Not yet. The battle was not over. But now, for the first time, humanity had hope. Marcus Kane stood at the bridge of the Liberator. The star-filled sky outside was a constant reminder of the enormity of the mission. The team had come this far, fighting through countless battles, defeating enemies larger and stronger than themselves. But now, they were at the heart of enemy territory, and the stakes couldn't be higher. They had one shot at this. "Captain, all systems are ready." Rachel Carter's voice rang clear, her calm demeanor masking the tension in the air. She stood beside Marcus, her eyes scanning the tactical display that showed the incoming threat. A series of incoming enemy ships appeared on the display. They were the Empire's elite forces, and Marcus knew they would stop at nothing to protect the Oblivion cannon. The mission was simple: destroy the superweapon before it could be finished. But with each passing minute, it seemed more and more complicated. Marcus's thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Lieutenant Davis, who was overseeing the fleet's movements. "Sir, enemy reinforcements are approaching from the east. They're bringing in heavy assault cruisers and bombers. We'll be outgunned if we don't act fast." Marcus clenched his jaw, his mind racing. This was it. No turning back now. The mission had already cost them countless soldiers, ships, and resources, and yet the Empire's sheer numbers still loomed as a terrifying obstacle. The odds were stacked against them, but Marcus had seen what humanity could do when faced with impossible odds. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle to prove they could stand against the Empire's tyranny. We need to hit them hard and fast, Marcus said, his voice low but filled with resolve. Deploy the fighters and charge the main cannons. We got one shot at this. The Liberator's command center was filled with the hum of activity as orders were carried out. Outside the ship, the battle began in earnest. Explosions lit up the void of space as fighter squadrons from both sides clashed in a violent dance of lasers and missiles. The larger ships exchanged fire, their weapons capable of turning entire fleets into space debris with a single well-placed shot. As the Liberator moved closer to the surface of Thraxis, the team could see the towering, almost incomprehensible structure of the Oblivion Cannon rising above the planet's atmosphere. It was the size of a moon, its surface bristling with energy conduits and massive shield generators designed to protect it from any attack. Marcus knew they had to destroy it, no matter the cost. He could see it now, a clear image of humanity's future if they failed. The Empire, unchallenged and unstoppable, turning their galaxy into an iron-fisted prison. Marcus, they've activated the shield, Rachel said, her voice tight. We won't be able to get close unless we take it down first. Then let's make them regret it, Marcus replied. Prepare for a full assault. Target the shield generators. The Liberator fired its main cannons, a series of massive energy blasts that streaked through space, heading straight for the shield. The moment the blasts hit, the entire ship shook as the Empire's defenses retaliated, their weapons unleashing a barrage of fire. It was like a storm of death, and Marcus knew they couldn't keep this up forever. But they didn't have to. The Liberator's fighter wings swooped in, dodging fire as they flew in perfect formations. They aimed for the weak spots in the Empire's defenses, their weapons firing in rapid bursts. The fighters were small, fast, and lethal, perfect for hitting at the heart of the Empire's defenses. They danced around enemy ships, landing critical hits where they mattered most. However, it wasn't just the fighters that kept the enemy at bay. The Alliance's elite soldiers were already on the ground, preparing to storm the Empire's base. A team of infiltrators had breached the outer defenses, fighting their way toward the heart of the Oblivion Cannon's construction site. They knew what was at stake. The moment they entered the cannon's core, they would need to plant explosives strong enough to level the entire facility. Marcus watched as the battle raged, his heart pounding. The stakes were higher than ever, and their only hope lay in completing their mission before the Empire could retaliate. But as the battle intensified, Marcus felt the weight of every decision, every sacrifice, pressing down on him. "Sir," Rachel called out, pulling him from his thoughts. "We've got a transmission. It's from the Empire." Marcus frowned. "Patch it through." The face of General Octavius appeared on the screen, his expression cold and mocking. "You think you can stop us?" he sneered. "You are nothing. The Oblivion Cannon will be the end of your pathetic resistance. You've already lost. You just don't know it yet."